All right, so this next bit of his career is really interesting, and it's where he really comes into his own. So he's met his business partner, which is Laurie Mallet, like future business partner, in like 1970. So when he's expelled, it doesn't stop him. He goes on to work for other companies like pretty much straight away and like designs collections for them. So people can obviously see that he's got talent, and that he's, really up and coming and someone to watch. He meets Laurie Mallet. Um, I think she was like on a buying trip or something. Anyway, they go on fabric buying trips to India, which is somewhere that he apparently really loved. And I'm sure I read that he, eventually wanted to move there permanently. Like he loved it that much. And also around this time, he's doing like collaborations with Christo and Jean-Claude, who, if you don't know, they're artists that in like the sort of 70s, 80s, around that time, maybe later. I'll do some more research into them. Basically, they were artists that, if you've ever seen, oh God, how on earth do I even describe what they do? One of their things was that they wrapped the Pont Neuf bridge in Paris, it looks like paper, but it's fabric. They wrapped the whole bridge. Oh God, they did that somewhere else as well, where they did big sculptural, it's kind of an installation, but working with big features and monuments and things that are already there. And Willi Smith designed basically the uniforms for the people that were working on it. But then those items of clothing became like mementos and sort of almost like a souvenir piece. And yeah, people really hung on to them. So yeah, just really cool that there was this collaboration between artist and designer, which really wasn't a done thing at the time. It was new and really bold, and this is why he's so fascinating, is that I'm sure he wasn't like the first, designers have worked with artists before, but he was someone that really melded those two worlds together and was really in that scene. Yeah, he was just super cool. Because this is like the era, he was around and in New York, like when Andy Warhol was around, and his whole crowd, and yeah, it's all happening. And so how can I put, yeah, so basically he does things for the people, and then he strikes out on his own, and his flagship store or showroom was very much inspired by New York at the time, and the people in New York in the areas that he knew. So it was very it was breeze block, chain link fences, very sort of grey, but then these clothes hanging up, the sort of show reel thing for it is there's people hanging off the fence naked and stuff. It was a bit I don't quite understand the link there, but it was very of its time. But at the time it was really exciting and bold. And he basically is the reason that fashion editors started calling this, before casual wear used to be called, it was known as sportswear. That was the term for casual clothing. And basically according to some of these essays in the book, so many people loved his clothing because it was affordable, He was really adamant that it had to be affordable, it had to be good quality, and it had to be like, he loved separates that people could mix and match and that fitted into their own wardrobe. He didn't want someone to be head to toe in his look. He was like, you don't need to do that with me. I want my clothes to fit in with you and your life. And so many people were into his clothing that everyone was wearing it on the street. And so fashion editors started calling this kind of clothing streetwear. So apparently, like, according to this, Willi Smith is the reason that we have something called streetwear, and he called it street couture, which I absolutely love. Like, what a great term. He was obviously a very clever guy, but this is why, I'll get into this now, like, this is why his work and his like ethics behind designing really struck a chord with me. He wanted people to be able to wear his clothes. He wasn't interested in being this big, like, luxury, like, designer label that people couldn't afford. He wanted everyday people to be able to wear his stuff and feel comfortable in it. He was like, has to be comfortable, has to be practical, has to be good quality, but also affordable. And like I said, so he loved people mixing and matching his stuff with like vintage or thrift store like buys, or, you know, more sort of quirky items or sort of fancy designer stuff. Like, he loved it. He also again, another essay says that he started designing, or like allowing his designs to be made into sew at home patterns, but I think like Butterick was definitely one of them, because girls were saying like, I want every item in your shop, but I can't afford to buy all of it. I can only really afford to buy like one at a time, because like I said, New York was having a hard time, and so people couldn't afford luxury items. And so he made it so that people could sew his stuff at home. It was still a Willi wear item of clothing because he was the designer, but it meant that people could make their own at home and make multiples. They didn't have to like keep buying it. Like, they bought the pattern, they bought it once, and then they could make more. And he was really behind that. Like, he was really into it. He believed in designing clothes for, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, he didn't design clothes for the Queen, he designed clothes for the people watching as she went by. So he was all about the person on the street. And I just think that's so wonderful, and something that's maybe missing from today's fashion world and the industry as it is. Like, it's so trend led, and you know, it's new fashions like almost every few days, but it's almost like they don't really care like who's wearing it, how it's being worn, whether it lasts or not. And he was yeah, like, the values behind his design, his designs and his clothing is just, yeah,